All right. Good morning, Doug. Lots of things we're just covering right before we started. You have an interesting list. So let's start with what you've got. You talked to something about the J6 people again.
Yes, I'm informed that there are 122 new people being investigated by the FBI uh, in the last 90 days. And you'd think after all this time, they'd let it go because it's a big nothing and it wasn't an insurrection. But uh, this is further proof of the ongoing corruption of the FBI. They actually have people that are pursuing average American citizens that just happen to be there. And they're doing this years later.
Years later, after this January 6th committee or commission that was set up has been uh, proven, it's been clearly demonstrated now that they withheld exonerating evidence, including all of the videos, inside the Capitol, the video that was released later showing that first there were Capitol police that shot rubber bullets and tear gas into the crowd before any of they even came in the building. So this is even with all this information out there, it has not taken them off of their goals at all.
Yeah, the state and its minions live in their own world. And this should be further proof, as if any was needed, that the state and the government uh, is your enemy. It's not your friend. So
Yes,
there's more
there's
to
one
this.
there's
More to it.
one related item to that I mentioned to you before we started is that I saw something on Twitter. It says the federal government has been illegally surveilling and building profiles for Americans in a secret portal called DSAC, DSAC. It's a list essentially of those who oppose firearm restrictions, lockdowns, vaccine mandates, and or border security, and it's labeling them as domestic extremists.
Well, especially since we have actual Jacobins that control the government in Washington, D.C. They're driving out decent people and they're actively recruiting very bad and dangerous people. So, yeah, of course. And they are going to cement themselves in office. And not that not that Trump winning is going to save much, but if the Democrats win, uh, it really is going to be game over, man.
Keep home, man. Yeah. And I did see also some clips online of three different instances where FBI was making visits to people's homes based upon Facebook posts that they said where they were just stopping in to check in with them. But FBI was coming and wanted to talk to them about their social media posts. So that also has been happening.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to see a lot more of that type of thing. So, anyway, what else do I have here? Um, well, talking about Trump, uh, it's interesting that in the 6 years since they've been conducting all kinds of active lawfare against him, starting with Russia Gate and then all these frivolous lawsuits and prosecutions and so forth, there have not been any suspicious suicides. Uh, well, there shouldn't be any suspicious suicides,
Mhm.
but I draw attention back to the days of Hillary Clinton when there were about 3 dozen people that were closely associated with her that had suspicious suicides. Accident, coincidence? Well, I don't know. Just take it for what it's worth.
It's an interesting observation. But they've definitely been going after Trump and anyone associated with him pretty hard. I saw that there was just a guy today that was sentenced to 5 months in jail for committing perjury in one of the Trump trials. I'm not sure. I don't remember where I saw that headline, but they're putting people behind bars. And who was the economic advisor who was ordered by Congress to reveal something? He claimed executive privilege, but they charged him in contempt of Congress and they put him in prison. What's his name? I don't know. I can't think of it right now. For 6 months. And he just
Hmm.
started last 2 weeks ago. He went to jail for that. So I mean, they are really using the force of the Department of Justice to go after people.
Yeah, they make a lot of fun of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know much about her, how objectionable she is, various levels. But it is nice that she's making the life of this new uh, House Majority Leader. What the hell? He's a nothing, nobody, nebbish, uh, but who basically is not that much different from Pelosi uh, in the Senate.
Yeah, and I agree, and I mean, she made some, she suggested that it was likely that the only possible explanation for the change in his behavior, supposedly being a Christian conservative and real conservative all these years, now that he's in that role, he passed, what, a $1.2 trillion spending bill the other day, and he's pushing forward with more Ukraine spending, and, she's like, "They must have something on him. They must have some dirt on him."
Absolutely. With the FBI and the NSA monitoring everything, uh, they can pick up things and very subtly imply to him that he ought to change his way of thinking, or this stuff will be leaked and bad things will happen. No question about it.
Certainly seems that way. So it's the most plausible explanation for why you see strange behavior of people once they get into these positions of power. It's
Yeah.
really the only makes sense.
Unless he actually killed somebody or did something that would result in his going to jail for the rest of his life. If he had any backbone, he would say what he was told or what was implied to him from one source or another, because no question that he's being blackmailed.
Yeah, and these, so it's weird. You see this contrast, where you see the seemingly pretty efficient state at going after people with lawfare and the Department of Justice, and on the other side, you see just this great incompetence in government and in roles of power. And one of the things you told me about, which I hadn't heard before, was this video, which I'll share, of Sheila Jackson Lee, who has been she's a congresswoman from Houston, and has been in that role since, I believe, 1996 or seven. And hopefully people can hear this fine. Just this is a long serving member of Congress here. Let's hear what she has to say about the moon.
And the sun went in a direction, and then the earth. Now, those provide unique light and energy so that you have the energy of the moon at night, and sometimes you've heard the word full moon. Sometimes you need to take the opportunity to come out and see a full moon is that complete rounded circle, which is made up mostly of gases. And that's why the question is why and how we as humans live on the moon. How the gas is such that we can do that. The sun is a mighty powerful heat, and it's almost impossible to go near the sun. The moon is not manageable, and you will see in a moment, and not a moment, you'll see in a couple of years that NASA is going back to the moon in human beings. Anybody heard of that? Well, I know there's some humorous things, but we are working now in the Artemis project to take human beings, astronauts, to land on the moon. I don't think they've been on the moon in the last 50 years, so we will be landing on the moon. What you will see today might be the closest distance that the moon has ever been in the last 20 years, which means that's why they will shut the light down, because they will be close to the earth, which is an amazing experience and what we are supposed to experience, and I'm hoping we can, complete darkness. But everything will be shut out. Now, we don't have any animals around here to be able to, maybe we'll hear some dogs barking, how they are impacting. But you will be able to tell because there will be complete darkness. You have the legitimate glasses, do you not? All right, we want to make sure that no one tries to be cute and look up without anything on their eyes. Please don't think that's a joke, but we will be walking you out of here, and we'll be holding your arm. and get you out of here because you won't be able to wreck yourself out. You understand what I'm saying? This is very serious. So what you're here for is to see the complete darkness. When I play the whistle, we're all going out on the field to be able to experience it. You're only get stopped.
Yeah, it's quite amazing to listen to a genuinely stupid person. I mean, we're not just talking about ignorant. The moon is made out of gases. Sun's hot. But she's a genuinely stupid person. It's quite amazing. And she's a lawyer, of course. Everybody in Congress is a lawyer. And they keep reelecting her year after year.
They keep reelecting her, and she, you'd think that she would pick up some things by sitting in these committees over time, like some basic facts. I mean, if she was any adult anywhere in the country that you talk to, I would be shocked by the level of her ignorance about stuff. I would just be, I don't know you would encounter an average person that would be this ignorant about some basic things. And so she's not just not the best and brightest. I think she's the dullest and dimmest.
Yeah, well, she's in Congress, and I'm sure she'll be there for as long as she wants, unless she's elevated to the Senate. And who was another exemplar of ignorance and stupidity? The Guam guy.
Oh yes, I've got that one too. In case you guys didn't see this was a couple of years ago in Congress. This is Representative Hank Johnson, Democrat from Georgia, also an American lawyer, hired or elected originally in 2007, if I recall.
That at its widest level is what, miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct? I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island, very small island, about 24 miles, if I recall, length. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know? I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like. Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize. We don't anticipate that. The Guam population, I think, currently about 175,000, and again, with 8,000 Marines and their families, it's an addition of about 25,000 more.
Yeah, so get a capsize. Now he actually looks like he's high. Now that I see that now, I think he's high. I don't, just the way he's talking, and I
Yeah,
think he smoked some dope before
yeah,
going.
that's a fair explanation, but it's possible that he's just really stupid and ignorant. Like this. It's funny, you can't see Amos and Andy cartoons anymore because they're very politically incorrect. It was about the Black community in Milwaukee during the 50s. And Amos was the taxi cab driver. He was a smart guy. But Andy and the Kingfish were a little bit like this guy. And they took it off the air because it was deemed to be racially charged. But this is like watching Saturday Night Live, listening to some of these congressmen.
It's hard to believe it's real, and it's hard. And when you think about everything that's going wrong in the U.S. at this stage, and then you see these elected leaders, and it's hard not to think that the problem is the voters. Fundamentally, if you consistently put these people in office, what do you expect? I mean, how are these people going to hold the Department of Justice accountable to anything or anybody? They know nothing.
Yeah, the voters have to be even more stupid than the people they elect. So further proof that there really isn't much hope. Um, so the next thing that we got here is Zimbabwe says it is going to a gold dollar. And in the past, I've talked about my relationship with Gideon Gono, who was the Minister of Economics that printed the $100 trillion bill. And everybody would think Gideon was a complete moron printing a $100 trillion bill. But actually, he was a very bright, well-educated guy who knew a great deal about economics. And Gideon said they only printed that because they had to pay the army, he and Comrade Mugabe. So there's a reason for that. It wasn't stupidity. And anyway, I'm not going to go into the,
If I recall, one thing in that story, if I recall, he said he had the Porter Stansberry newsletter that he showed you, or like his End of America video that he watched with you, or something like that.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time socializing with Gideon, and he showed me, or he didn't show me, but he played for me a speech or an advertising piece that Porter Stansberry had done that he thought was very good. And it was very good, explaining the problems with the dollar. So Porter's stuff has even gotten to Zimbabwe, and the director of the Central Bank of Zimbabwe printed under. So anyway, one thing Gideon wanted to do, and he gave me a paper on type paper, his plan for a gold Zimbabwe dollar. Okay. So he was a good-hearted guy, and he didn't want to be central banker anymore. He was also, well, he had made plenty of money because he was Mugabe's personal banker. But anyway, so Zimbabwe is promoting the fact that they've come out with a gold Zimbabwe dollar, but it's not going to work because it'll be a fractional reserve gold Zimbabwe dollar with 1% backing or 2% or 5%. The government's bankrupt. They really don't have any gold, and they need to print money for the same reason that Gideon did way back when. So it's just hype. It's a sham, the gold Zimbabwe dollar. The only way you could have a gold dollar, or should have it, is 100%, where your dollar gets you a fixed amount of gold at will. And the only way you can do that is if there's 100% reserves. So there can never be a rat in the bank. Anyway, just wanted to mention that because they're talking about a gold Zim dollar. Obviously, getting into some other people there.
Yeah, and it'll kick the can down the road maybe for a week for them, right? Maybe it'll give a little bit of energy to their currency for but
Exactly. Zimbabwe is completely hopeless, I'm afraid. The next thing I have is that Biden wants to forgive the student debt, or a good portion of the student debt, for 25 million people. His timing is excellent with the election coming up and young people disliking him even more than old people. So this is a good.
And it was a big promise he made in advance of the last election, and could be argued that why he had a lot of support among younger people, because they were all hoping and expecting with his election that they'd get their debt forgiven, which they did not.
Yeah. So this might garner some votes for him. And once again, I'll say that the Democrats are going to win the election, whether or not they get more votes than Trump does or not. But it's a fraud being committed on the American people, because the people that did pay off their student loans, they're suckers. Whereas these people that have their debt forgiven, and it's not only that, but the debt that's forgiven for those people, the 25 million, going to have to be paid off by American taxpayers or the American population. You know, the money's not going to. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden and I, we paid off her student loans in January. You know, just doing the right thing like responsible adults.
Yes, or acting like suckers too.
I guess so. I guess so.
I,
It's
I know morality and virtue is punished in this bizarre world we have.
it is, but fuck them. I'm still gonna do it. That's my view.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, because you got to live with yourself. But this is how you destroy civilization. And the other thing that is in the news today is that the post office is raising the price of a stamp to 73 cents.
What's the first price of the stamp you recall?
3 cents. Stamps were 3 cents. And postcards were 1 cent when I was a kid. I started collecting stamps, incidentally. And they had been the same price for, well, basically forever, a 3 cent stamp. And the post office always lost money, but not big money. So the only way to solve this problem, not that many people use the mail anymore for all kinds of reasons, but it would be to totally privatize the post office. In other words, to sell it lock, stock, and barrel to anybody that would buy it, and see if they can deliver the mail profitably. And I'm sure they can. They could fire all kinds of dead wood, and if it's run like a business, which it's not, but that's not going to happen. So
Do you know if they still have forever stamps?
I don't know, but I do remember those. Yes. But, the U.S. has reached the stage where we've started printing stamps that don't have a specific penny or dollar amount on them. Now, this is true a lot of backward third world countries where there's series like H series, J series. So, it's a further indication of a collapsing civilization.
Yeah,
And
and I've got something related to that. This insane woman pilot the other day, and do you mind if I share that?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen the video, undoubtedly from somebody's iPhone.
Yeah, yeah. And this is on. I think it's an Inside Edition clip, but yeah, here we go. It's interesting to see.
Don't feel safe. Get off the airplane.
This is your captain speak. Well, never like this.
I've stopped and I will fly the airplane. Don't worry, I'm going to let my co-pilot fly it. He's a man. Okay?
It's a total meltdown. The pilot boarded in her street clothes and addressed the passengers over the intercom. Passenger Pam O'Neill couldn't believe what was happening.
He said, let's take a vote. How many of you would like to take off now with me dressed as I am? Or would you prefer that I take 10 minutes to get changed into my cute little uniform? Then she started talking about her divorce and political candidates. And then the minute she mentioned that, a gentleman stood up and just yelled, whoa, enough, you're scaring me.
Another passenger, Randy Reese, got up to leave and gave a running commentary on social media. Pilot also insulted a couple on board.
Did I offend you? Okay, so did I purposely offend you? I did. The answer's yes. But it kind of played the thumb door.
After 20 passengers insisted on getting off the United Airlines flight, the pilot quietly left the aircraft.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane. Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
These unhinged people, Doug. Sorry, these unhinged people are out of control. I mean, they see, especially. I mean, I say it. I'm not a sexist person, but a lot of women are losing it.
She's got to be a DEI hire. Got to be. And you shouldn't have people like that flying jet airliners. She's obviously unhinged. She's almost psychotic.
Talking about her divorce?
Yeah.
I mean, unstable for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I can't wait to find out which airline was it? Do we know?
I think they said that was Southwest.
Hmm.
Now, there's one thing on Southwest is that the pilots and the crew are always too chatty on the headset. You know, they try and they do some of them do a stand-up routine almost. They try and be funny. And I always find that I never like it, but it's kind of like their relaxed charm they try and bring to it. I hate it. I want to see professionals. Yeah, fine.
Just shut up and get me to where I'm going. Exactly.
Yeah, but I think the relaxed nature probably made it so she felt like, yeah, no, it's normal for me to grab the mic and then let my unhinged nature be displayed to the entire public.
I suspect we'll see more of that type of thing as country in general comes unglued in between now and November.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's one more. Well, I got one more little video. I think that's worth sharing. This is one. This is of the streets in Seattle. I think this is a preview of what we should expect more of in the future. Kill the music. But you get the idea. This goes on for another 30 seconds or so. Working girls all over the place. And I mean, these are just all signs of a decaying society, I think. I mean, I don't believe that that should be illegal or anything like that, but it's a sign of a problem, a real serious problem, the rot in the culture.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more of that type of thing as a lot of young girls, young women, and old women for that matter, uh, will turn out to be newly minted hoes and hookers. You're going to see a lot more of that, no question about it.
Disaster.
It's really quite disturbing. I was thinking, how does what's going on now compare to the last episode of craziness that the U.S. had, which was the late 60s and the early 70s, which I've mentioned before. There were 4,000 bombings back in those days, which most people don't remember. But I remember when the election of 1964, and this was at Georgetown University, where I misallocated 4 years of my time. And it was just before the elections, presidential elections in 1964. And all of my classmates were supporting Lyndon Baines Johnson. Well, how stupid was that? Because a couple of years later, they were rioting about Johnson with the war in Vietnam and all this type of thing. So, they had no philosophical grounding, supporting him and then hating him and so forth. But back then, there was a lot of craziness. Like there was one French movie producer director named Jean-Luc Godard, and he was very, very popular with the college kids because he proclaimed himself as a strident Marxist. And at the same time, a few years later, actually, that I witnessed my classmates act like chimpanzees in support of Lyndon Baines Johnson. I went to a theater in Georgetown to watch one of Jean-Luc Godard's movies. I'd heard a lot about him. And the movie was La Chinoise. The theater was packed with students. And the movie was so horrible, so boring, so strident, so unintelligible that I had to get up halfway through the movie. But it was full of students that thought it was great. So things were crazy back then in the late 60s and early 70s. They're crazy now in a different way, and actually in a more serious way, because crazy people have control of the apparatus of the state. And when you have control of the apparatus of the state, you can make people do things. That's something the students back then couldn't do. They could just annoy people. But this is different now, because those students back then are populating Capitol Hill and the White House and their children who have taken over their values. So this is much more serious. And it was serious and crazy back then.
Yeah. Well, but you pointed out to me before is that it did get better. after that craziness.
Yes, because we always want to leave people laughing and leave listeners on a high note. And after the craziness of the 70s, we got to the 80s when people had bumper stickers on the back of their car. He who dies with the most toys win. So it's schizophrenia, where they go from being crazy yippies to stockbrokers that want to get all the junk
They
and
want
money.
boats and they want boats and cars and
Yeah. Signs of degraded beings, frankly, going
So
from
do
one
you-
extreme to another.
but this extreme is worse. I mean, is there a way? Is there any possibility that you could see the U.S. in a decade or so having worked its way out of this, having moved past this in some way as it did, and not necessarily a great state, but a stable place again as it did after the craziness of the 60s?
Yeah, because at least the 80s weren't crazy in the same way. I question that because the general moral tenor of the country has gone down further. And of course, we're going to have 20 or 30 or 40 million migrants to deal with. And we don't know what effect they're going to have on all of this. And back then in the late 60s and early 70s, yeah, there was a recession and the stock market moved violently and so forth. But things were still sustainable from an economic and a financial point of view. There were still factories in the U.S. There were still, working men and the values of, Leave It to Beaver values of the 50s were still there. But that's all washed away now. So, yeah, I guess things will recover because look, the French Revolution, they executed 30,000 people with guillotines. They tore the society upside down with, changing the months of the year and renaming them and all kinds of craziness. But France still existed as France after that. So,
But I got Napoleon.
but they got Napoleon. So I guess the U.S. will go on, assuming we don't have a war with nuclear weapons. That might change things a little bit more.
One last thing, in that period in the late 60s and early 70s, how was the faith in institutions? Because that's one thing that's clearly evident now is that there's a loss of faith among, I would say, the majority of the population at this point in institutions, whether they be medical, health institutions, and government. Even the military is not held in the same regard as it has been throughout my entire life. I mean, even that, which has been the one thing that's been there, held high, is certainly esteem has been lowered. The military has been humiliated, I think, with Afghanistan and other things. And people don't believe in anything anymore. So how was that? How does that compare with that period of time?
It was like that then, but not nearly to the extent that it is today.
Okay. So people were losing faith in institutions.
I think so. The family, we should make a complete list of how things have changed in the last 50 years. And we could make another list of how things have changed in the 50 years before that. And it would be fascinating.
Yeah, we should do that. I'll start working on putting that together. Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for now, Doug. And yeah, and we'll be back. Not this week. We'll be back next week for more.
Yes. Great,
All right.
Matt.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.